the Middle Ages, rulers believed that stone could protect them. They trusted walls, towers, locks, and armed men more than anything else in the world. A castle was not only a home, it was a promise that power could be defended, that danger could be kept outside, that sleep could be peaceful. One night, in a fortress high in the mountains, that promise was quietly broken. There was no battle, no shouting, no clash of steel, nothing that would later appear in chronicles or songs. While the guards stood at their posts and torches burned in the corridors, a man was already inside the heart of the castle. He did not come to kill. He came to leave a message. By the time the ruler opened his eyes the next morning, the danger was already gone. All that remained was a dagger hidden beneath his pillow and a single line written in calm, deliberate words. It did not threaten him with war. It did not demand gold. It simply told him that his life had already been in someone else's hands. From that moment on, the fortress was no longer a fortress. In a world ruled by armies and kings, a new kind of power was being born. Power that did not need banners or battles or territory. A power that worked in silence and spread through fear. Somewhere in the mountains of Persia, a small group of men had discovered that to control an empire, sometimes it was enough to control a single mind. In the East, they were known by one name. In the West, by another. A word that would travel across languages and centuries long after their castles had vanished. Assassin. But before the word became a legend, it belonged to real men. And their story begins here. Long before the name assassin began to terrify kings, there was only a man searching for his place in the world. Hasan Sabbah did not grow up among soldiers or princes. He was raised among books, debates, and ideas. While other young men learned how to fight, he learned how to think. And in the political landscape of the 11th century, this made him both dangerous and powerless at the same time. The Seljuk Empire was built on force. Authority belonged to those who commanded armies, who collected taxes, who ruled cities from fortified palaces. Without soldiers, a man had no voice. Hasan understood this rule better than most. He traveled through Persia, studied different schools of thought, observed courts and ministers, and slowly came to a conclusion that would shape the rest of his life. Empires, he realized, were not controlled by crowds. They were controlled by a few individuals who made decisions in silence. From this observation, a new strategy emerged. Hasan did not ask how to defeat armies. He asked how to influence those who commanded them. If a general could be frightened, an army could be paralyzed. If a vizier could be silenced, a government could collapse. Power in his mind was not a matter of numbers, but of access. Instead of gathering troops, he gathered followers. Men who were willing to disappear from the world, to abandon their former lives, to obey without hesitation. He did not promise them wealth or land. He promised them meaning, a role in a struggle that to them felt larger than life itself. Discipline became their daily practice. Secrecy became their identity. Waiting became their greatest skill. What Hasan was building did not resemble any state known to the medieval world. There would be no visible borders, no official capital, no banners raised in battle. His organization would exist in fragments, in cells, in whispers. A network designed not to conquer territory, but to influence decisions. A power that could move without being seen and strike without warning. At this stage, few noticed him. He was not yet a threat to sultans or generals, but quietly, patiently, he was shaping something entirely new. Not an army, not a kingdom, but a method. And once that method was complete, the balance of power in the Middle Ages would begin to change. Every system needs a center. Not a capital in the usual sense, but a place where decisions can be made in safety, where secrets can be protected, and where time itself seems to slow down. For Hasan Sabbah, such a place could not lie in a city or on a trade route. It had to be beyond the reach of armies, beyond the eyes of rulers, beyond the habits of ordinary life. His search led him north into the Alborz Mountains. There, on a narrow ridge of stone surrounded by deep valleys, stood a fortress that seemed almost unreal. Alamut did not dominate the landscape by size, but by position. The paths that led to it were thin and dangerous. In winter, snow cut it off from the world. In summer, fog hid it from distant eyes. For an invading army, it was not a prize, it was a trap. Hasan did not arrive with soldiers. He did not surround the walls with siege engines. Instead, he did what had already become his signature method. He entered the system slowly. He made contacts inside the fortress. He studied its internal balance. And over time, loyalties shifted. One night, without a single battle, Alamut changed hands. This moment was more important than any victory in war. Because Alamut was not taken to defend land. It was taken to create a headquarters for an invisible power. From this isolated fortress, messages could travel across Persia and Syria. Here, recruits could be trained far from curious eyes. Here, plans could be made without interference. Hasan himself chose to remain within these walls for most of his life, turning the fortress into both a monastery and a command center. Life in Alamut followed strict rules. Luxury was forbidden. Discipline was absolute. Days were filled with study, training, and silence. Hasan controlled every detail of the community, from doctrine to daily routine. This was not a palace, it was a workshop dedicated to the construction of a new kind of power. Slowly, other fortresses in the surrounding mountains came under the same control. Each one isolated, each one small, each one connected by secret routes and coded messages. No map showed the true extent of this network. No banner marked its territory. But in the courts of the Seljuks, rumors began to spread. Somewhere in the mountains, a man was building something that could not be confronted by ordinary means. From the outside, Alamut remained a silent ruin of stone. From the inside, it had become the nerve center of a system designed to influence empires. And for the first time, Hasan Sabbah possessed not only an idea, but a place where that idea could survive, grow, and prepare to strike. As the influence of Hasan Sabbah's network expanded, something else began to grow alongside it. Not armies, not fortresses, but stories. In the medieval world, fear rarely travels alone. It is almost always accompanied by imagination. And when people cannot understand how a small group of men defeats great powers, they begin to invent explanations that are darker, stranger, and more dramatic than reality. This is how the legend of the Garden of Paradise was born. According to Western writers, The assassins possessed a secret place hidden inside their mountain stronghold. Young recruits were said to be drugged and carried into a magnificent garden filled with running water, fruit trees, music, and women. When they awoke, they were told they had seen heaven itself. Then they were drugged again and returned to the fortress, convinced that obedience would one day bring them back to paradise forever. For medieval Europe, this story solved a mystery. It explained how men could walk toward death without hesitation. It turned a political organization into a cult and a strategy into a form of madness. The tale became famous through travelers and chroniclers, especially through the writings attributed to Marco Polo. But here, history becomes uncertain. There is no archaeological evidence of such a garden, no ruins, no descriptions from reliable eyewitnesses, no records inside Alamut itself. Marco Polo, the man who spread the story across Europe, had never seen the fortress. His account was based on rumors, repeated many times, each repetition adding new details. Modern historians suggest a simpler explanation. Perhaps there was no garden at all. Perhaps there was only strict discipline, careful indoctrination, and years of psychological training. Young men isolated from their families, immersed in doctrine, taught to obey without question, and trained to accept death as part of duty. In such an environment, courage does not need drugs. Belief is enough. Another possibility is even more unsettling. The story itself may have been a weapon, an invention created by enemies, repeated by frightened rulers, and accepted because it made the assassins easier to hate, easier to fear, and easier to describe as something inhuman. In the end, the truth may never be known. But perhaps the truth is less important than the effect, because whether the garden existed or not, the legend worked. Rulers believed it, soldiers whispered about it, chroniclers wrote it down. And through that belief, the assassins became more than a political force. They became a myth. And sometimes, a myth can be more powerful than any army. The assassins did not build their power on conquest. They did not raise armies, lay siege to cities, or march beneath banners. Their battlefield was not land, it was attention. And their weapon was not numbers, it was precision. In a world where wars could last for years and cost thousands of lives, they chose a different mathematics. One life, taken at the right moment, could change the direction of an empire. Every operation began with patience. A target was never chosen in haste. Viziers, governors, generals, sometimes even kings themselves, men whose decisions affected entire regions. Once a target was selected, observation began. Where he prayed, where he ate, who guarded him, when he was alone. Weeks turned into months, months into years. The assassin did not rush. Time was part of the plan. Infiltration followed. A recruit would become a servant, a guard, a messenger, a scholar. He would learn the rhythms of the household, the habits of the court, the weaknesses no one else noticed. And while he waited, he lived an ordinary life, invisible among hundreds of others. When the moment finally came, the attack was never hidden. It happened in public, in a mosque after prayer, in a market at midday, in a palace corridor surrounded by guards. One strike, no escape. The assassin did not run. He did not fight to survive. He accepted capture, torture, and death as part of the mission. Because survival was never the objective. The objective was the message. And the message was always the same. If we can reach him, we can reach anyone. The victim was only the beginning. The true audience was everyone who witnessed the act and everyone who heard about it afterward. Fear traveled faster than any messenger. Soon, rulers began to suspect their own servants. Guards became potential enemies. Friends became possible traitors. The palace itself turned into a prison. Gradually, fear began to replace force. Some rulers chose to pay for safety. Some signed secret agreements. Some simply avoided provoking the invisible network. The assassins did not become rich. They became untouchable. They had transformed murder into a language understood in every court, in every army, in every palace. And through that language, a small organization had discovered how to influence decisions without ever holding power openly. In the medieval world, this was something entirely new. Not war, not diplomacy, but terror as a system. For many years, the assassins survived by balancing between empires. They fought the Seljuks when necessary, negotiated with the Crusaders when useful, and avoided open war whenever possible. Their strength did not come from loyalty to any side, but from their ability to adapt. In a divided medieval world, neutrality was often the safest form of power. One man understood this danger better than most: Saladin. Twice, assassins reached his camp. Twice, he survived. And twice, he received the same message: even the strongest commander could be touched. Saladin did not try to destroy the assassins by force. He chose something wiser. He made peace. Because some enemies were too costly to fight. For a time, this balance worked. But in the 13th century, a different kind of power arrived from the east. The Mongols. They did not fear death. They did not negotiate. They did not respect symbols of terror. When a Mongol envoy was killed, Hulagu Khan answered without hesitation. Alamut would be erased. In 1256, Mongol armies surrounded the fortress. There were no secret treaties now. No assassins could reach this enemy. Months passed. Supplies ran out. Resistance collapsed. When the gates finally opened, the end came quickly. The fortress was destroyed. The libraries were burned. The records of 2 centuries vanished in fire. What armies had failed to do? One fearless empire accomplished in a single campaign. The invisible state had met an enemy that did not believe in fear, and it did not survive. The castles of the assassins fell, their leaders disappeared, and their network dissolved into history. But something strange happened after their defeat. While their power vanished, their name survived. And in some ways, it grew stronger than the organization itself. In Europe, a single word remained: assassin. At first, it referred only to them. Then, slowly, it changed its meaning. It no longer described a specific group, but a method. Anyone who killed in secret for political purpose inherited the same name. The word crossed languages, borders, and centuries. Long after Alamut had become a ruin, the assassins were still present in everyday speech. Their true legacy, however, was not linguistic. It was strategic. They had demonstrated something entirely new: that a small group could influence empires without controlling land, that a single act, placed carefully in the right moment, could alter decisions made thousands of kilometers away. That fear, when organized, could become a form of power more flexible than armies and more precise than diplomacy. Over time, History repeated this lesson in different forms: secret agents, intelligence networks, political violence, covert operations. The names changed, the ideologies changed, but the principle remained familiar. Influence does not always require visibility. Sometimes it only requires uncertainty. Of course, many stories about the assassins were exaggerated. Perhaps the garden never existed. Perhaps much of their legend was invented by enemies. But exaggeration itself became part of their strength. Because in politics, reputation often matters more than reality. In the end, the assassins were not a state. They were not an army. They were an experiment in how far fear could travel and how long an idea could survive after its creators were gone. And in that sense, their most important victory did not happen in any battle. It happened in memory. Thank you for staying with us until the final moment of this story. If this documentary has given you a new perspective on the Middle Ages or helped you understand how power can take forms beyond armies and crowns, then it has achieved its purpose. If you would like to see more documentaries like this, you can support this channel by subscribing and sharing this video with others who enjoy history. And if you have thoughts, questions, or different interpretations, we invite you to leave them in the comments below. Your ideas help shape what we explore next. In our next documentary, we will uncover another hidden force from history. Until then, remember, empires can fall, but ideas have a way of surviving far longer than stone and steel.